Okay, so welcome back. My name is Marc Belaiche, president of TorontoJobs.ca. You're at the Canadian Fractional and Interim Executive Summit. I'm joined by Eric Gowland, CEO of Edge, Eric D. Gowland Enterprises. Thanks very much for being on today, Eric.
Nice to be here, Marc. Thanks.
So we're going to cover a lot of stuff. We'll talk about your background. If you have any questions you're watching and you have any questions for Eric, things you want to talk about, hot topics that you might want to know about as a fractional and interim executive, Eric's the guy. He knows a lot about fractional and interim executives. So maybe talk right now or what you're doing right now, Eric. You mentioned you are currently a president at an IT company. Why don't you talk about kind of the roles that you have had from a fractional perspective?
Yeah. Currently, fractional president role at Reese Informatica out of Kitchener. It's a managed service provider and security provider. I had met the owner through a peer-to-peer group, and you mentioned in your top 10 list about fractional executives that networking is key. Most, if not all, of my opportunities and jobs through fractional executives have come through my networking. So this particular peer-to-peer group has been where most of my networking has been done. Reese Informatica is a relatively small company, a couple $1 million in sales. The owner wanted to take it from a lifestyle business and grow it into an international business and really capitalize on what his vision was. And he's a great visionary, technical visionary, and he needed someone who could be the integrator, someone who could execute. So my role there has been over the last year and a half in helping him lay out the business plan, lay out the quarterly objectives for all the employees. And as we laid out the plan and as we started to grow, we've doubled in sales, we've doubled our employee base, we've opened an office in Malaysia, we've expanded our office in Lisbon, Portugal, to get the sort of follow the sun model going for the IT business. At the same time as I've been learning a ton about the IT business, because my background is really operations and manufacturing. But what Enrique Reese liked about what I could bring to the business was the idea of helping lay out the plans and execute and make things happen. So with him as the visionary and me as the executing guy, that seems to have worked out really well. So that's a 2-day-a-week fractional president role. And what I found is, contrary to some of my other fractional roles where I know operations, manufacturing operations, and get sucked into a lot of the weeds and the day-to-day operations. With the IT, I'm learning a ton, but I'm able to stay at that right level for the president role and the integrator role to make sure I don't get sucked into too many of the weeds. So that's one role. The second role that I have right now is another 2-day-a-week. It's a vice president of operations. It's for a company that sells, installs, and services overhead doors, so garage doors, both commercial and residential. The role there, the owner was buying out his partner, taking on the business completely himself. Again, I had met the owner through a peer-to-peer group. Him and I, over the last 3 years, had developed a good personal relationship. And he said, hey, I'd really like to be able to work with you, but I don't think I can afford you. I said, well, there is a fractional role where I can add value, but on a more focused time frame, 2 days a week, and help on the development of the business plan and the execution of a lot of the key initiatives. And that seems to have worked out really well. And both of these roles started before the pandemic. The IT company has grown as a result of the pandemic. The overhead door company suffered through the pandemic. So both roles there have been slightly different, but both helping us get through that global pandemic. So those are the two key roles for a fractional executive for myself. And what's interesting is in the past, I started off as a mechanical engineer, got involved in Ernst & Young and their management consulting group. And from there started my own consulting business and then got into some full-time executive roles over the years, and that's where I got a lot of my experience in different roles. And what I found was, as I've got older, and as I believe your number 2 point on your top 10 list is understanding market trends. My network was with companies that were in the $5 million to $25 million sales range. And a lot of them were interested in my skill set, wanted to tap into it, but weren't sure they wanted to, weren't sure they had a full-time role, and weren't sure they could afford that full-time role. So it's worked out quite nicely to have that fractional executive role has evolved over the last few years for myself. And I just finished putting together my website, edgenterprises.ca. And that's up and running now, and it's really promoting the fractional executive side of what I do, because I think that's really where I'm 55 years old. I've got lots of good experience and a great network, and I think my career going forward is going to be mostly focused on the fractional side of life. So
excellent, because in the past, you had also been nominated for EY's Entrepreneur of the Year and Profit Magazine's Hot 50 list. So there has definitely been a shift. So how long have you been actually doing the fractional piece of things?
The fractional, and I didn't even, people have asked me, what is fractional? I haven't heard that before. What is that term? What does that mean? I said, well, it's a fancy way of saying it's a part-time executive role, and you can, in some cases, you can charge more for that. So there you go. But I think over the last 3 or 4 years is where I've seen more and more opportunities for not only getting away from more consulting and more of a fractional executive role. And for me, the consulting is more project-based, whereas the fractional executive is more involved in the full-time day-to-day operations of the business, but focused on some of the major change initiatives on an ongoing full-time, part-time basis. So.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. And so you talked about your website, edgenterprises.ca. It's great. It's easy to read. How important do you think having a website is for somebody who's serious about being a fractional executive?
I think it's really important to be able to allow people to dig deeper into you and understand some of the experience that you've had. So I use it more to talk about some of the engagements in greater depth about what was the owner looking for in the business? Why did he come to me? What was the role he envisioned? What were some of the major milestones that we had planned out and achieved? And what were some of the business results that were achieved as a result of that? So I think it gives owners an idea of what you can do for them that they wouldn't get from looking at a LinkedIn profile, or they wouldn't get from a resume or just a conversation. It allows them to dig a little deeper into you and your experience and come up with some additional questions at their own pace, at their own speed.
Yeah, that's great the way you've laid it out too, with testimonials and testimonials / recommendations, examples of your work and so on. That's it's great. So in addition to that, I mean, you are involved. You're a change management professional. Do you? One of my top 10 tips is about specializing. Do you feel you're specialized because you've got a whole bunch of industry experience, food and beverage, automotive, industrial? Do you see yourself as kind of that president that you're specialized, or operational president, or operational where you feel that you're a specialist in, or you feel you're kind of involved with several different things?
Yeah, I see it spreading and evolving. So my major background throughout my career has been in manufacturing. And what I found over the last 10 years was a lot of manufacturing changing or shrinking in the Ontario market and moving to more distribution and service. So there seemed to be more and more service opportunities as opposed to manufacturing opportunities. So I was able to add that to my experience and focus on that. So I would say my initial focus when I discuss things with folks is my main background is in operations. Whether you're servicing companies or whether you're manufacturing something, that's where my main skill set is. Now, the secondary skill set or the secondary benefit that I think I bring to the table is when I become part of the executive team, I can take on the leadership role, the president role, the CEO role. But if the owner still wants to be the main person and involved in that and be the key leader, then I can be the second banana. I can be part of the team, or I can be where I found by accident a lot of the value that I can add is sitting around the boardroom table or in the same office as the owner and being that sounding board, being that critical, objective eye for them to help them bounce ideas off of. And not just on the business side, but we all work a lot and we all work very hard and our lives are intertwined with our businesses. So in some cases, it becomes a coaching role or a mentoring role for that executive who is trying to change from a general issuing orders to a little more delegation as their business grows because they can't do everything, and a little more dealing with a different workforce that's coming in. Millennials get bashed a lot, and I'm not here to bash, but I am here to say it is a different workforce that requires a different take and a different handling. So I think I can help with that as well. So a lot of the change management stuff that I found I've been doing is with the owner initially. And then when it comes to executing on major projects, it's who do we need to lead this? Who do we need to change their behavior? And then that kind of stuff flows out of the project. But the main change management and coaching is with the owner, I find.
Fair enough. Oh, that's good. Now, you mentioned earlier about the name Fractional, and people are somewhat kind of getting used to it. It's evolved. There was interim, part-time, and so on. How do you think just the name itself, is it kind of people who are in that area? Do you think it confuses potential prospects? What does fractional mean? Fractional?
Yeah, I think fractional to me gives it the heft and respect that I believe it deserves, as opposed to a part-time or interim. It's more than just I got a gap, I'm going to grab this person and throw them in here. It's a planned, thoughtful use of an expertise that is missing in the organization that you want to use with laser focus. So that's what I like about the fractional phraseology, as opposed to part-time or interim.
Yeah, that's good. I'm here. My name is Marc Belaiche, in case you're just joining, president of TorontoJobs.ca. I'm joined by Eric Gowland, who's CEO of Edge, which is Eric D. Gowland Enterprises. You want to check out his website at edgenterprises.ca as well. And so, Eric, what do you think, from your experience, maybe things you've done wrong that you'd rather reopen, turn back the clock and kind of say, if I should have done this, maybe you lost an opportunity because you think you did something like this, like maybe that you can share with the audience, something that you might want to share or you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you asked that question, Marc, because I've learned so much over my career by my failures, and there's been a ton, and they're much more memorable and they stick with you. And if you're able to learn from it and change, then it's super, super valuable. So I look at that as the drip, drip, drip of water on a brick that makes that hard cornered brick into a little softer, a little rounder, a little smoother. So I feel like that brick, or I'm getting to be that brick. I've learned from business bankruptcies. I've learned from successes, but I've learned mainly from the failures as opposed to the successes. Successes are fun to celebrate, and they reaffirm what you already knew, is that, man, I'm great. but it's the failures that really help you learn and grow and get better in reality. I think for me, one of the things I've thought a lot about is the constant communication and feedback loop that's required to the owner. I think in the past I have misinterpreted meetings as communication, and setting up a regular meeting with a key employee or a key peer or an owner is important, but it's the questions that are asked and it's the uncomfortable questions that need to get discussed that is the most important thing. And because they're uncomfortable, it's easy to skip them because they're not always fun to have. So how am I doing? Am I fulfilling that role as a fractional executive that you expected? We talked about achieving these goals. We talked about these business results. But do you look to me as a key person to rely on, to ask advice from? Or is the relationship between us difficult? So I think forcing that discussion on a regular basis is a really important thing that I think I've been happy to avoid in some cases in the past. So I think that's one key thing that I would encourage anyone to do, but especially on a fractional executive role, because you're not there all the time. And it's easy to become, the owner can become frustrated and say, I need that person, they're not here, I'll go do it on my own. So like you said, another one of your items on the top 10 list was being available. So making sure that you're available even when you're not on site. Right now, I've got 2 days a week at a couple different places. Monday, Tuesday at one, Wednesday, Thursday at another. But that doesn't, there's all kinds of crossover, and that's necessary. Sometimes I've got meetings on a Monday that isn't my day to be at this company, but I have those meetings anyway. And you have to be flexible with your time and allocate it appropriately. And taking the time to check in with that owner and with those key members of your team to see how they're doing all the way throughout the week, even though you've only dedicating 2 days a week or whatever to a particular client is really important.
And how has COVID changed, kind of working from home, like your communication approach, how you get your work done and so on? How's that changed over the last year?
It's a bit of a dance to try to figure out how you can insert yourself into someone's day without becoming a pain, without just having a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. So I've tried to balance between having specific recurring meetings and then just checking in with people from time to time. I had a particular colleague whose wife was going through some medical testing, and he was concerned about that. So I just check in with him on that. How did she do? How are you feeling? Is everything all right? So there's following up on some of the personal stuff and checking in with people. There might be a special customer visit. There might be a special project meeting. If you're not part of that specifically, just checking in with them to see how they're doing is important. So I find there's a lot of quick check-ins, and sometimes people are available, sometimes they're not. But when they're available, try to be to the point so you're not wasting their time, but so that they know that you're there and you can have some real meaningful conversations with people. So it has been a challenge for sure.
Right. So one of the biggest questions that we get at these events, this particular event, is how do you charge? So without, revealing anything about yourself, but just if somebody's watching, like, do you charge by the hour? Do you charge by the day rate, certain number of days in a month? What seems to work best for you? What's your general approach?
Yeah, for me, it's a fixed fee with some kind of upside has always been, over time, seems to be the most successful approach. People want to know, how much am I going to pay on a regular basis? And if I can swallow that and I'm getting the value for that in my mind, then I can deal with it. And if there's certain business results that are achieved, then there can be some kind of bonus or kicker at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, or whatever. If we all win, then we all share it in that win somehow. So the way I've worked it out in the past, and I've explained it to owners that seems to go over fine, is let's say for for math's sake, if I make $30,000 a year, then for every day that I work, I make, in a 5-day week, I make $6,000 a year. So depending on how many days I'm working, I say I can work 2 days at this rate, or 3 days at this rate, or 5 days at this rate. And they can, in their mind, convert that to, if I had this guy full time, this is what I'd be paying. Does that make sense? And yeah, that would make sense for that role, but I don't have that kind of money to pay for that experienced full-time executive, but I'm okay to pay the 1 day a week, or 3 days a week, or 2 days a week. So I just take the annual, divide it by 5, and say that's how much per day on an ongoing full-time basis for that day that you get me for.
All right, great advice. And that is just, you just invoice. And now I know in the past, other people have indicated that sometimes they're offered stock options or some kind of equity within the company.
Yep.
And interesting concept. Some people have said, yeah, I'm think it's great. There's an opportunity there. And others have said, don't bother, because, most of the time I won't be able to cash it out anyway. So, we're going to go through a whole bunch of hurdles and do it. So what's your take on that?
Well, I don't know if it was on your top 10 list, Marc, but flexibility is really, really key. You can't have a one-size-fits-all approach. So my question is always, what works for you? And I think in the past, I've had owners who have said, you know what I want to do? I want to grow this business, and then I want to sell it. So let's triple our sales. Let's take the next 5 years, triple our sales, and then I want to sell this thing. So in that case, I've said, okay, do you need my help to grow it, to sell it? Yes, that's why I want to hire you on a fractional basis. Okay. Then what I'd like to do is I'd like to take my regular rate. I'd like to reduce it. And if I reduce it by 20%, then I want to share at a 40% or 60% rate when you sell the business down the road. So if I'm taking the risk or reducing my expected income by this much, by a factor of 1, then on the upside, I want a factor of 2 or 3 or 4. So that's kind of how I've done it in the past. And honestly, the reason why you need that 3, 4, 5 times upside is because it rarely happens. Because a 5-year plan to grow and sell a business rarely turns into that. Along the path, things change. Life experiences happen, or ideas change, or whatever. So sometimes things change, and then you find that you reduced your income with an expectation of a big payday, and then it never happened. So that's why you need multiples on the upside, is because it doesn't always happen.
Right. Now, you're also one of the original 50 theory of constraints experts. And that a number of different areas, holistic strategy, operations management. Why don't you talk about what that is for those that don't know what theory of constraints is?
I got introduced to Ellie Goldratt through the book, The Goal. So if you've been in manufacturing, you're likely have at some point your boss has come by, thrown the book on your desk and said, hey, read this. It's really important. So Ellie Goldratt was a physicist who got involved in business, and his theory was that, and it works, is that every business, sorry about that, my phone thinks I'm talking to it. Every business is a system, and every system has a constraint. And if you can figure out what the constraint is in that system and manage it, then you're able to actually get exponential growth out of that system. So I started reading more and more from Ellie Goldratt about systems and about constraints and how to set up, how to manage constraints. and started to apply it to business. And during my during the 2000s, I founded a business with a partner called Constraints Management Systems, and it was developing rapid profit growth strategies, sales and profit growth strategies for typically, at the time, it was manufacturing, but manufacturing and distribution businesses. And the idea was to identify during the strategy process where the constraint was in the business and whether or not you wanted it there, and then strategically locate or relocate the constraint in the business and develop systems around, delivery systems around that constraint to help you manage resources better and accelerate output and accelerate sales and profit. So it was really, really a fascinating time. Ended up going to Cambridge University in England and sitting on the grass, felt like a bit of a hippie, a bit of a groupie, while Ellie Goldratt sat there and smoked his pipe and pontificated on his theories around constraints in systems and in business. And then my partners and I had to take that information, scratch our heads a bit, have a few pints, discuss the concepts, and then figure out how to apply that in a real world manufacturing and distribution environment. And at the time, the Theory of Constraints International Certification Organization was born. And Ellie Goldratt anointed, if you will, these top 50 people that had proven by either working directly with him or being part of his entourage that we at least were understanding the concepts and trying to figure out how to apply them in a real world environment. So it's been applied in hospital settings. It's been applied in manufacturing and distribution. It's been applied in software development or major project organizations, construction organizations. So for me, that lifelong learning is so important. And during the 2000s, that's where I really dove in to constraints management and learned a ton. And I apply it to this day. Lean manufacturing, constraints management, and a lot of the quality improvement systems that I've learned over the years have been a key part of what's in my quiver of tools, I guess.
That's great. That's great. So we only have a couple minutes left here. Is there just 30 seconds to promote anything you want, how people can get hold of you, or what's the best way of getting hold of you?
Yeah, well, if you happen to be, you can go to my website at edgenterprises.ca. My cell is there, but it's 519-835-3742. I'm an operations expert, but if you're dissatisfied with the current state of your business and you want to grow and you're not exactly sure which path to take, I'd love to sit down with you and your team and bring my skill set and experience to the table, help you set up a plan to grow, and then on an ongoing fractional basis, help you manage that and help you grow.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for joining, Eric. Really great getting to know you and hearing a little bit more about your story. Eric Gowland, the CEO of Edge, Eric D. Gowland Enterprises. You can visit his website. Make sure to connect with him if there's anything you can collaborate on. Again, my name is Marc Belaiche, president of TorontoJobs.ca. In about 15 minutes or so, I'll be moderating a panel live, and you'll be able to ask some questions to the panelists. I'll introduce them in a few minutes, but we've got a great panel lined up, great conversation for sure that we'll have. So thanks again, Eric. All the best and stay safe. And for everyone else, check out the networking area. Got 15 minutes. There's another session that's going on right now as well until 3:30 Eastern. And we'll be wrapping up at 4 o'clock. So about 45 minutes left. And don't forget to check out the expo. And we also have the one-click polls that you want to take as well. So thanks again. Take care. Stay safe.
Thanks, Marc.
Thanks.